Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something incredibly fascinating and honestly pretty urgent. We're talking about a radical paradigm shift happening right now in the world of mental health. For decades, the way we understand, diagnose, and treat mental illness has kind of been stuck in neutral. It's locked into this framework that a lot of experts are now arguing is just fundamentally flawed. So, we're unpacking a comprehensive look at Psychiatry, the Case for Starting Over by Dr. Abraham Peled. We're going to explore exactly why our current system is facing a massive crisis of validity. And better yet, we're going to look at the groundbreaking neuroscience-backed solution that's stepping up to take its place. Think about this for a second. The manual achieves reliability by refusing validity, classifying fever without investigating infection. That perfectly captures the fatal flaw of modern psychiatry. We are basically diagnosing people by their symptoms instead of their actual biological causes. Imagine going to your doctor with a blazing fever and they just say, yep, you've got high temperature disorder, and send you packing. No, they run tests to find the actual infection, right? But the diagnostic manual we use for mental health, the DSM, well, it essentially does just that. It gives us a reliable checklist of symptoms, the fever, but totally ignores the underlying disease, the infection. It categorizes how you feel on the surface without ever looking at the biological hardware underneath. Part 1, Psychiatry's Fatal Category Error. To really get why we absolutely need a new approach, we've got to look at how we got stuck in this current system in the first place. The history here honestly reads like a medical mystery. Back in the 1790s, Penel started organizing asylum patients using symptom checklists. Move to the 1890s, and Kraepelin creates this massive taxonomy. But here's the kicker. Kraepelin's system was only ever meant to be a temporary placeholder. It was supposed to just hold us over until the neuroscience caught up. But, well, the neuroscience never arrived on the DSM's terms. Fast forward to 1973, and the American Psychiatric Association literally held a vote, a show of hands, to remove homosexuality from the DSM. Whatever you think of the history, the scientific takeaway is pretty staggering. Diseases defined by committee votes aren't grounded in biology. By 2013, even the director of the National Institute of Mental Health, Thomas Insel, declared they were abandoning DSM categories altogether because they just lacked scientific validity. So the DSM approach versus the neuroscience approach, we're essentially relying on a checklist of feelings instead of looking at the brain's actual hardware. The old way, the DSM way, is all about surface phenomenology. It's like trying to map the bottom of the ocean by just looking at the ripples on the surface. But the neuroscience approach, that's where science actually lives today. It's built on biological mechanisms, computable neural networks, and dynamic brain organization. It's a massive shift. We're moving from asking, hey, what are you feeling, to what is your neural network actually doing? Section 2. The brain as a network. So to fix this huge category error, we have to totally rethink our foundation using the math of the brain itself. And this isn't just some wild theory. Decades of research have converged to show us that mental illness is actually a computable failure in our dynamic neural networks. We've got Hopfield networks showing how memory lives in distributed systems, and Hinton's backpropagation showing how layered networks build representations. Then you add in Carl Friston's free energy principle and Tononi's integrated information theory. It sounds super dense, I know, but the point is, all these ideas point to one undeniable conclusion. The dynamic network of the brain is the actual physical substrate of the mind, and because of that, it's the exact place where mental disorders occur. Enter predictive coding. This is the idea that the brain is basically a prediction machine, and mental illness is fundamentally just a glitch in that predictive coding. Think about it. Your brain doesn't just passively record the world. It's constantly guessing what's going to happen next. It anticipates. When those predictions match reality, we're good to go. But when the network dynamics misfire, the predictions fail. Your brain starts misinterpreting sensory input or even your own internal states. So what we call mental illness, anxiety, depression, psychosis, is at its core a breakdown in this prediction machinery. Part 3, Clinical Brain Profiling Explained. Let's look at how we actually take all this complex neural math and use it in a real doctor's office. The core of this is neuroanalysis, which proposes that mental disorders are fundamentally disorders of cortico-striato-thalamocortical network dynamics. I know, cortico-striato-thalamocortical is a total mouthful, so let's just call it the CSTC network. This is the brain's main loop for processing information, action, and reward. With this new framework, mental illness is no longer just some vague mood. It's a specific physical disruption happening right inside the dynamics of this very real physical circuit. Now, clinical brain profiling breaks down the massive idea of brain plasticity into 4 distinct biological timescales. Because the brain isn't static, right? It changes, but at different speeds. In milliseconds, you have cognizance plasticity. That's the rapid-fire gamma oscillation of your immediate thoughts. Then, over minutes to hours, there's reactive plasticity, which is your neurotransmission and working memory. Over days to weeks, we get into adaptive plasticity, where actual synaptic remodeling takes place. And finally, over your entire lifetime, developmental plasticity shapes your brain's architecture through epigenetics. So figuring out exactly when a problem is happening is just as crucial as knowing where it's happening. When you look through this new lens, something amazing happens. The hundreds of incredibly complex DSM categories completely dissolve into just 6 transdiagnostic entities. Just 6. Imagine taking that giant, overwhelming dictionary of psychiatric disorders and boiling it down to the only 6 categories that actually correspond to real physical brain states. Here they are: psychosis, negative signs, anxiety, depression, mania, and personality disorder patterns. That's the whole list. And the key here is that these aren't just symptom clusters you check off on a clipboard. Each one is a distinct physical circuit configuration in the brain. So, under clinical brain profiling, if someone comes in with depression, the doctor isn't just slapping a label on their sadness. They're actually identifying a specific maladaptive state within that CSTC network we talked about.
Section 4. Matching tools to circuits. This is definitely the most practical and, honestly, the most exciting part of this entire shift. Because if we're changing how we diagnose, we have to totally revolutionize how we treat. Instead of just guessing which pill might mask a symptom, we now have an incredible, precise arsenal of neuromodulation tools mapped directly to specific circuits. We're talking ECT for broad plasticity resets, high-frequency RTMS targeted straight at the left DLPFC to physically alter the circuits causing depression. We've got low-frequency RTMS aimed specifically to quiet auditory hallucinations. Then there's TDCS, deep thalamic targeting with focused ultrasound, and even psychedelic-assisted therapies to fundamentally reset structural connectivity. Every single tool maps to a specific biological timescale and a very specific physical circuit.
So the governing rule of this whole new psychiatric era boils down to this: what tool fits this circuit at this timescale? It's no longer about what drug kind of fits a subjective diagnosis. It's about what exact tool fixes the specific circuit. We're finally upgrading from throwing a wrench at an engine and hoping for the best to using a laser-guided tool to adjust the exact valve that's misfiring.
The old way versus the new way. Relying on old psychopharmacology can actually really backfire. For decades, treating psychosis meant relying heavily on dopamine D2 blockade. But through the lens of neuroanalysis, we can see that while that might suppress the psychosis, it inadvertently acts as a massive amplifier for negative signs like emotional flatness or a total loss of motivation. You basically solve one network problem by accidentally creating another one. The new way? That involves consulting the CPP Atlas to deploy precision neuromodulation. It gives doctors a clinical grammar to select the exact tool needed, keeping collateral damage to an absolute minimum.
Section 5. Explanations instead of labels. Because, having all this cool science is one thing, but actually using it to help real people is what really matters.
The DSM was never the map. It was just the absence of one. Neuroanalysis actually provides the map. The author makes such a powerful point here. This isn't just some theoretical critique waiting for a futuristic solution. The solution is literally already here. The neuromodulation tools are ready, or they're becoming ready right now. We've been trying to navigate the incredibly complex terrain of the human mind without a map, pretending that a list of symptoms was the geography. It wasn't. But now, we actually have the map. Offer the patient sitting across the desk not a label, but an explanation. This right here is why all of this matters so much. People suffering from mental illness deserve to understand the actual biology of what is happening to them. Imagine sitting across from your doctor, terrified because your own mind feels like it's working against you. Being handed a committee-approved label, like you have major depressive disorder, doesn't tell you why it's happening or how it works. But being told, hey, you have a disruption in the adaptive plasticity of your CSTC circuit, and here is the exact tool we're going to use to reset it. Man, that is incredibly empowering. It strips away the stigma and replaces it with pure biology. So, will psychiatry finally choose biological explanations over committee-made labels? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with that provocative question. The science is incredibly clear. The network theories converge beautifully. The tools for precise neuromodulation are literally in our hands right now. The only thing standing in the way of this massive leap forward is just institutional momentum. Will the medical establishment find the courage to ditch 2 centuries of category errors and embrace the true computable complexity of the brain?
It's a question that's going to affect millions of lives and, honestly, the future of medicine itself. Think about that.